1, 2, 3. Okay. Hello again. Thank you very much. Will you please introduce yourself for our audience, and yes, what you do right now, and how you have become interested in biotechnology and business models in biotechnology, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm Jean-Pierre Segers. I'm from Belgium, and I am affiliated to Riga Technical University in Latvia, and also to Université de Liège in Belgium, where I did my PhD on the biopharmaceutical industry in Belgium. And I think I can say that we have two well-performing biopharma ecosystems in Belgium, both in the Flanders region, the Flemish-speaking region, the north of Belgium, but also in the Walloon region, near to the French border, with Liège and Charleroi as anchor points for the biopharmaceutical industry. And also now in our current COVID pandemic times, I can say that Belgium is very hot in international news, because a lot of big pharmaceuticals are present on Belgian soil, and also a lot of biotechnology companies, and also vaccine production is taking place in Belgium, but of course within an international network. And yeah, we are also very proud of high-level scientists, internationally renowned scientists that are working, for example, for Johnson & Johnson, for GSK, working for the US government, you name them, and connecting very well with international high-level networks, also in France, of course. So that's where my interest comes from in the biopharmaceutical and biotech industry. And also the digitalization that is going on, also a lot of emerging technologies that are coming on the scene. If we think about artificial intelligence, for example, we are no longer talking alone about chemicals or biologicals, but it's like a cocktail of technologies that are coming together, and everything is becoming interwoven and interconnected. So all the technologies are enhancing the way forward for new vaccines, for new medicines, for new treatments, new therapies. So yeah, that's a very important issue for future generations and for healthcare in general.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Why do you think that Belgium has become a hotspot for biotechnology and for production of vaccines, in Europe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the historical anchor points is probably Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is the core of Johnson & Johnson Healthcare, and Johnson & Johnson in New Jersey in the United States. But historically, Dr. Janssen, he founded Janssen Pharmaceuticals in Belgium, and yeah, it has become a world-renowned global company for healthcare and for new therapies, new medicines, also vaccines now, because as you will know, the fourth approved vaccine by the EMA and the FDA is the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, but it's in fact the Janssen vaccine. And then the second point is probably that a lot of big pharmaceuticals are present in Belgium, also historically, both in the Flanders as in the Walloon region. And one of them is GlaxoSmithKline in Rixensart, near to Brussels. So you have there the headquarters, the world headquarters of vaccine production near to the Brussels region in Wavre and in Rixensart. So those are two examples. But you see also, if you look, for example, to Euronext Brussels and Euronext Paris, both are connected to one another. You see, and also Nasdaq in New York, you see a lot of new biotech firms on the stock exchange charts. So both in Brussels, in Paris, and in New York. and a lot of Belgian and also, I must add, French biotech companies are now on that stock exchange for years now. So there's also a very heavy connection between Belgium and France on those issues, by the way. So that's important to mention also.
Yes,
and it has, of course, to do with,
especially in Flanders, French Flanders. I have read there are lots of French biotechs that are working on vaccine projects. My next question is Belgium is working on some new COVID vaccine projects? Are they working on, because in France, I know that very small biotech are working, but they are not really open to interviews. I have tried to contact them, but it is difficult to reach them. Are there any I think there might be.
In the Charleroi region, you have the company Universels, and they are also being supported by the Bill Gates Foundation and by George Soros, the world-renowned investor. And they are also working on bringing vaccines to countries that are struggling to get vaccines into their country because they don't have the financial means to buy them. So, the COVAX initiative by the World Health Organization. So that's also an issue. There is also the company Novacep that is working together with AstraZeneca for the vaccine production. So there are several good examples in Belgium and also connected to France again on that issue.
That's great. Thank you very much. I have read all of the articles that you have sent me. I think that the classification that you have made from biotech companies, their business model is the most complete one that I have ever seen, So there are, I think there are 15 models that you have described. If today with what's happening in biotechnology in general and in biotech companies who are working on vaccine, if you want to reclassify these business models, will you add something, or will you remove, or will you have mostly the tendency to describe a new type of business models that is emerging among this biotechnology?
That's a very interesting and a very good question, because since you contacted me, I was thinking about rewriting those papers, because there are so many evolutions in business models, what is called business model innovation, business model shifts. And that again connects with what I just mentioned, the emerging new technologies, the digitalization. Everything is coming together at a much greater speed. And you see there's also the issue of sustainability. You have the old and the traditional closed business models, then the evolution towards more open innovation business models, also networked business models. There's, for example, a very well-known professor in Toulouse who's working on that. Brigitte Gay is her name. That she has a nice paper on that. So where you see how the network is very important for building the business model. And then now there is an evolution towards digitalization and towards sustainability. Think about the Sustainable Development Goals. So the old business model of vertical integration and of doing everything yourself, from research and development to production, approval, marketing, post-approval issues. That business model is maybe no longer valid, or is the most difficult business model to pursue, because also you have your patenting issues coming there, patenting to secure your revenues, of course. And then you see the evolution towards hybrid business models. That means that companies will do several things at the same time, or will try to work at a business model where you can see that one invention can lead to different therapies, or can be good to look into what they call therapy families, so that with one new medicine you can work to treat several kinds of therapeutic issues. And the same is probably valid for vaccination also, because from the research and development, new insights and new avenues arise. And so the company or the companies in question within the ecosystem or the network, they can look into different avenues to pursue in the future. A good example can also be if you look at, and that's an example in Liège that I'm following on a daily basis. Mitra Pharmaceuticals, for example, is working on a new contraceptive. It was maybe around 80 years since there was a new contraceptive on the market, and now their Estelle contraceptive has just been approved in Canada, and they are now waiting for EMA and FDA approval. But what is important for this case is that they are doing the production themselves, so they are not only doing research and development, but also producing the new findings. So that is again an example of vertical integration. But other examples, for example, you have the biotech company Emergence in Ghent, listed on Nasdaq, listed on Euronext, and they are now waiting for FDA approval for an antibody, monoclonal antibody drug, and they are looking at different gateways, different therapies to bring that new treatment to different therapies. So there you see that a more hybrid model is being introduced. So just to say that there is no one size fits all business model. There are so many, as you said. You mentioned 15, but maybe I could list 50 business model and still not be at the end of all the possibilities. So new business models keep arising. And again, it comes back to the interweavenness of new technologies and the networking issues, the connections, the building of ecosystems.
So I think that Belgium is becoming a biotech nation, I think. Really, or has become already a biotech.
I think we already are a biotech nation, but not if you would compare Belgium. Of course, we are a very small country, but big in biotech, and that's a slogan. But you can, of course, not compare Belgium to what is happening in San Francisco or in Boston or in New York, or even in the greater London area, for example, because you still will need a lot of scale. And one of my issues, I also mentioned that in my PhD, is that I would like to see that the Flanders region and the French-speaking region in Wallonia, that they would work together more, so that you could build a mega cluster. Because you see that investors and also the companies in themselves, they work together cross borders. So if you take Flanders and you take Wallonia, you see that investors are working together vice versa. So and that would give rise to a mega cluster. And then if you could connect that Belgian cluster, for example, with the clusters in your country, in France, because we are the most favorite neighbors of one another, then you could build something big, and that could stand next to a cluster, for example, in the United States, or if you take Massachusetts and Boston, or Cambridge and Boston, or you take the Bay Area in San Francisco, then you need a big scale, of course.
How this can be encouraged, how we can accelerate, to create a big cluster, as you mentioned, to attract more investments, and to put together all these skills, how we can contribute, to the creation. Do you think that there is not enough education, there's not enough information, people who are, who are working around them are not still aware of all of the possibilities that they can have if they work together? Or do you think that there's are policies or regulation that might be, facilitate to accelerate this, putting them together, their all forces? What do you propose?
Yeah, very good question again. And I think you already formulated the beginning of the answer, because I would mention two words. The first one is ecosystem, and the second one is triple helix, or even quadruple helix. And you mentioned the key points of triple helix already in your introduction of the question. First of all, the governments should work together more on a European level and on an intra-country level to bring the industry to a higher level and be able to compete with, for example, what is happening in the United States or in China, because we also have to look at China. The pandemic, the COVID pandemic has learned us that China is taking over global networks, so that is a key issue. And then the second issue within triple helix would be, we all have very well known and top level universities and research institutions. Bringing those institutions within good networks of innovation, of open innovation, of open science, that would be a real plus to bring it to the next level. And then the third one, of course, is that if you connect well to your stakeholders, that means to the patients, to the healthcare providers, to the consumers, to the suppliers. So then you become a really open system, and you bring all the elements together. And if we succeed as a society in doing that, then we can bring the industry and the healthcare innovations to a next level. So
definitely. You mentioned in your articles to the importance of open innovation, especially about the vaccine, COVID vaccine, the article that you have written. So will you please explain what you mean for our audience? What do you mean by open innovation in vaccine, COVID vaccine? That's it. And second question is, do you think that the organizations, the governments and universities, they have reached to a degree of maturity that they're ready to contribute to open innovation? Yes or no, or what can be done?
Yeah. So open innovation, simply defined, is bringing external knowledge into your company, into your system, and on the other hand, bringing internal knowledge to the outside. That would be a very simple definition of open innovation. And the two godfathers of open innovation, Henry Chesbrough from Berkeley, and also the Belgian professor Wim van Haverbeek, who is well known in this science. But to answer your question, yeah, open innovation connects to, of course, the traditional intellectual property rights and the patenting, where you need patenting to secure future revenues. But open innovation is not like a competitor of patenting, because with open innovation you can build new things and new science and new revenues together with your competitors or together with your network. So that is where open innovation is very important. And if we connect that to COVID-19, to the vaccine production, there's, for example, a high-level discussion going on all over the world that the COVID-19 patents or the discoveries should be opened up to the rest of the world, so that production of the vaccines could happen in several plants and in several countries and in several regions, so that the vaccination could be accelerated and the production of vaccines could be accelerated. Also the provision of vaccines, of course. So that's where for example, the European Union is looking at, the World Health Organization is looking at. But yeah, then you come to the interim conclusion that several big companies, of course, want to protect what they have. They want to attract revenue from that. They say that the pricing of the vaccines will be kept fairly acceptable and fairly lower than normal. But we will have to see what happens in the coming years if they keep to that promise. So, but I'm convinced, like many, that thinking and that is called responsible innovation. Also, thinking in a responsible innovation way and in an open innovation way, that can enhance the way forward for more people getting the right treatments and getting the vaccines at this moment. Because otherwise we will remain in the current situation where you see that a lot of discussions are happening and everyone is struggling to roll out the vaccination strategy, and people are being are very angry with their government and with the system and with regulations and so on and so on. So we will have to get out of that.
We hope so.
Yeah.
So we hope so. So one question that I'm thinking about this whenever I read a new article, whenever I just read a piece of news about vaccination, etc. You know that in the classical, I say that now it has become a classic Osterwalder model, spaces model, the canvas model has become rather old in my view. That might be, I think a serious revision is needed, to complete the blocks, probably remove some of them, or add new ones. So they talk, all of the books, all of the articles that are written about medications, pharmaceuticals, vaccination, they talk about value creation and value proposition. In my view, it is, especially during the pandemic, the concept of value proposition and value creation has changed. How, in your view, how this has changed? I think that, the pharmaceutical companies and those who produce vaccines for all of the world, they have another vision about what is value now. If you want to describe or define what is value, what is their value proposition today, what can we say?
I would describe the value proposition fairly simple. Again, thinking about the concept of responsible innovation that I have been looking into. The most important thing in that way of thinking is that you bring the right treatment to the right person in the right time. So when a patient or you or I need a treatment and we need it now, then companies, biotech companies, biopharmaceutical companies, we look at them to find us a treatment, and a treatment that we can afford, of course. And then if you take, for example, what is called the rare diseases, or treatments that are not being looked into by pharmaceuticals because there are not that many patients in the world, and because treatments are very difficult to find, and they cost a lot of money to research them. Then you see a paradox, because you have patients who need a treatment, who are struggling with a very rare disease, and they need a treatment, and they have to wait for a treatment to come to the world and to be found by the big pharmaceuticals. So that's a paradox. But for those people, the main thing is that the treatment will be brought to them, and there you see that there is an evolution also in the business models of a lot of companies, that they see that they need to find affordable treatments. And there is also a business model for that. It's called pay for performance. So you only get paid if your treatment, if your medicine indeed works. and is well taken by patients. So that could be a new business model also that is coming to the forefront. The most important thing is again that the value proposition for the companies itself, of course, is the going concern. They want to find new innovations. Big pharmaceuticals look at small biotech companies to find innovations, because they see that the R&D cycle in the big pharmaceuticals is going down, is diminishing. And that's why a lot of strategic alliances are being built. A lot of acquisitions are there. The big companies take over the smaller companies, and then because they are very good at marketing the new innovations and selling the new treatments. But so the value proposition for them is securing future revenues and the going concern of the company. For the smaller company, the important thing is that they can keep on doing what they want to do in research and development, and maybe becoming a big company themselves. On the other hand, there is also the notion of an exit strategy. And that's, again, connecting to what I just said, that the main thing for the patient on the other side of the continuum is to get the treatment that is needed. And there are so many diseases, new diseases, new therapies that are needed. If you look at the new gene therapies, RNA that is coming to the forefront now in the COVID-19 pandemic. We were not talking about those things a few years ago. So there you see evolution again in the whole system.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, definitely. So because, when I read articles, companies, they say that we are so patient-centric, and the only reason we are collecting patients' data and information, it is just for reusing them to improve the quality of, and I think, no, this is not really honest, Probably they are, because, this is the patient at the end of the day who has to accept the products. It is not really honest. I think that probably might be removed from the vocabularies, because I always say that there are new vocabularies that are entering keywords into this, this discussions. I think that the age of patient centricity, is behind us. Probably we have to think about new concepts and new keywords to have, to reach to the reality of the things that are happening within companies. I have one last question. How do you see that, what is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the emergence of the new business models among biotechs? So do you think that this has encouraged new generation of biotech companies to come into the market, that they are still coming and entering into the market, and this may bring a new dynamic to the whole market of the biotech, and even for other diseases, as you mentioned, I read an article about Moderna's project to find a vaccine that's very efficient for a great number of, against a great number of viruses. So this project is not yet finished. It was just before COVID, but I think if this is by using mRNA technology, it will be a very big innovation for the whole world. Do you think that this COVID impact probably has at least this positive, this positive result on the emergence of a new generation of the biotech companies?
Yeah, again, a very good question. I have two answers to it. First of all, I would mention the emergence of the new technologies, and what I mentioned when we started the interview, the cocktail of technologies that comes together. Now, biotech is heavily connected with artificial intelligence, with big data. In fact, it's about data and merging data. And again, if you look at open innovation, open science, opening compound libraries, opening data for others to work on and work with, stakeholder engagement, to connect to what you said earlier on, on patient-centricity. Crowdsourcing, for example, becomes very important. And then the second part of my answer on your question, there are, in fact, I agree, a lot of new companies coming to the forefront. I follow the financial news on a daily basis on biotech and biopharma, and I cannot keep up with the new initial public offerings that are on the stock exchange, for example, by new small biotech companies, medtech companies, medical technology companies. For example, in the Liège region, they are building a big new inter-university hospital in Liège, where it has been built, and around that hospital there is now an ecosystem rising of new medtech companies and biotech companies, not only Belgian but also foreign, who are there. So you see new ecosystems arising out of that. And yeah, I agree that if you connect all of that to the emerging and the new technologies, as I mentioned, the data companies, the AI companies, that there you see that the new technologies can enhance new business models and the emergence of new companies. I'm convinced.
Yeah, but as far as I know, these new technologies like mRNA, these are very expensive technologies.
Yeah.
So they required a lot of investments. In France, I know that in one of the regions, the head of the region department, it has opened the investment. He has created a governmental fund for funding the investment in all of the innovative industries. And if it's successful, it will open this investment to public, to private investors. I think that this can be a good way, to attract more investment, into these clusters, into these new technologies. And I do not know how people could be informed or educated to be interested into invest into it, because this is our future, investing in healthcare and investing in biotech. This is, this is something that can create a lot of jobs for young people. So I think it's a good thing. How do you think about opening this investment, to public?
Yeah, that's of course the difference with for example, the system in the United States, where you have a lot of people investing. The public is investing, and of course, the United States government is investing heavily. The private sector, of course, is the biggest investor. But you see that the level of investment, for example, in the United States compared to Europe, is a big difference. We are good at bringing investments to a certain level, and then it stops. But the level above that is much higher and much more needed if you want to go ahead all the way. And that is where there is a lot of work still needed in Europe to bring investments to that next level, and to get to a United States level, I would say. If you look at NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange, or you look at, I visited Silicon Valley twice, and if you go to Sand Hill Road, where you see all the venture capitalists lined up next to one another and lined up next to the new technology companies, the Series A, B, C rounds. We are good in Europe in the first rounds, but we need to get to the rounds that really matter, and that's where, for example, in the United States, they are ahead of us. But what could we do about that? There is, of course, we are more government regulated, so there is the example and the influence of the regional and the other governments. That's the first thing. Second thing, for example, here in Belgium, you have like private and public financing companies that bring money into the system, investment money into the system. I mentioned initial public offerings, and the level of new initial public offerings that are very important, and the way that the public, like you and I, can bring our own private money into that. I like to buy stocks of biotech companies and practice what I preach. So I do that also on a daily basis, and not always with success, of course. But but that means that the bigger public, can invest also in those companies, and then you come to also to the new kind of investment things like crowd lending. I mentioned crowdsourcing, where you look for new ideas with the public. But crowd lending can also be an issue, and if you connect that to your fiscal system in your country, you could give an impulse to the public to invest, and then they can get something back via their taxations also.
Definitely.
So those are all kind of issues that can be important in the future.
Okay. Thank you very much for this very inspiring discussion. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. I cut the recording and I come back to you.